Hi guys, Matt Schlicht with ZapChain, and I'm here with Ross McKelvie, the lead engineer at Boost VC, which is one of the best and largest Bitcoin investors. So welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we're basically trying to help everybody understand more about Bitcoin because it can be super complicated in the beginning. So hopefully you can help us with that.
Sure.
So tell us a little bit about Boost.
All right, we're a startup accelerator here in San Mateo, and in the last 2 years we've started accelerating about 67 Bitcoin companies, and we're halfway focused on Bitcoin. Right now we have about 25 Bitcoin companies that have gone through the program.
That's awesome. So how did you get started with Bitcoin? Like, did you get started with Boost first and then Bitcoin, or the other way around?
Right, actually we had just finished the first session at Boost, and Brayton's family was in town, and his brother, who goes by Dinosaur, was really into Bitcoin. I was a student at UC Berkeley, and they were actually on their way out when he mentioned Bitcoin, and everybody was standing up around this table, and we actually stood there for about 2 hours while he whiteboarded and explained Bitcoin to us and how there'll only ever be 21 million and all the advantages. And right after that, we all went and bought Bitcoin.
And then decided that you were gonna invest in Bitcoin companies with Boost?
Not exactly. It was kind of like, okay, we got some Bitcoin, we started sending it to each other, and we started researching a little bit, and we're like, maybe this is a thing. And at first we weren't going to be like a halfway Bitcoin accelerator and focused on Bitcoin. We decided we would do one class that was half Bitcoin. And that was such a success, and we really liked the people and Bitcoin, saw it growing and the industry growing, that we decided to focus on that for the next 3 years.
So when you first heard about Bitcoin, like did you get it immediately? Was it confusing? Like, did you just think it was this kind of like pretend money, or?
Oh yeah, it blew my mind. So I'd heard about it before among people that talk about Silk Road, and I thought it was just a currency like Microsoft Xbox points and stuff like that you just bought on this website that you used to buy items. And then when it was actually explained to me by Brayton's brother, it blew my mind.
And Brayton is one of the founders of Boost VC.
Yes.
Right.
And it blew my mind. And I remember about like a couple days after that, Adam said, when engineers are very excited about something, you know that it's going to be huge. And he likened it to the internet and computer hardware that both his dad and his grandfather went through as investors themselves.
And so he was like, you as an engineer need to learn everything about it so you can explain all the little intricate
There was about a week where all of our jobs was to research Bitcoin. We all downloaded, printed out the white paper, we read it, we scoured the internet for everything that we could, hung out on Bitcoin Talk, and just figured out everything about Bitcoin, and we all got stoked on it.
So I think when a lot of people hear about Bitcoin, they hear about it as a currency, or magic internet money, or maybe they heard about it because of Silk Road. But most people don't realize that there's actually two things going on. There's Bitcoin, the currency, and then there's also Bitcoin, the protocol, which is the blockchain. For everybody watching who may not yet have a good grasp on what the protocol part is, do you want to explain what the blockchain is?
Sure. Bitcoin itself is a great piece of technology. Just like everyone understands that you use the internet, you connect to Wi-Fi, and you get to Facebook, there's a lot of underlying technology there that's really important that built up the internet to be as great as it is. And its main application is currency, and that's where a lot of the problems that this technology is solving stem from. So the blockchain is basically a stacked list of all of the transactions that have happened on the Bitcoin network. So you can go back into the history of Bitcoin and see 2 years ago where I sent Adam 1 Bitcoin for lunch. And basically, every 10 minutes, a block is made and added to the chain, and each block contains 10 minutes of transactions on the network. And there are a lot of these computers out there that are doing something called proof of work. And what they're doing is they're all stacking these transactions on each other, and they're running an algorithm that produces a number as a result. And my computer's doing that, your computer's doing that. I get a number, you get a number. When they match, we both announce to the network that yes, this transaction happened, this block is real, and the network starts to agree on it. So the incentive for us is that every block, every 10 minutes is rewarded with Bitcoin. This is how Bitcoin are slowly released into the world. And if my computer is first, I announce I found block number 1 million, you're doing the same computations, and you reach the same number as me, and the whole world starts to agree. And so the network contains everybody's balance and everybody's transactions throughout history.
And so those computers, those are the mining computers?
These are the computers that are operating as miners, yes.
Right. And so in order to confirm a transaction, so if I send you Bitcoin, then all these mining computers around the world are solving these math problems.
Yes.
And then once they get to the same number and they agree, then Bitcoin is a network, not like the government or a centralized like organization. Bitcoin is just like the software is like, okay, that transaction is actually real. Now Ross has this 1 Bitcoin and Matt does not have that Bitcoin anymore.
Right.
So what, like, the other thing is there's Bitcoin miners, but then there's also these things called nodes, which Bitcoin mining itself can be pretty complicated. You know, understanding the currency, that's like probably the easiest thing. Blockchain is probably like the next most difficult, and then Bitcoin miners is like the third most difficult thing. And then there's nodes, which I think most people probably aren't even aware exist. So what is a node, and how is that different from like a Bitcoin miner?
So Bitcoin itself is decentralized. With your US dollar, you have the Federal Reserve that controls, and the government and the banks all control how much money you have and where it is. Each node operates independently and is talking to the network to get pieces of it. When Satoshi actually wrote the white paper, he didn't predict mining pools where there was one computer at the front operating as a node that talked to the network and then distributed the work behind it. Every miner was supposed to be out there doing the same thing with a lot of these nodes talking to each other. Now we've got about 10 mining pools out there that are talking to each other.
So what is a mining pool?
A mining pool is a full Bitcoin node that operates on the network. It's receiving the transactions. When you send me a Bitcoin, you're announcing to all the Bitcoin nodes. They're all connected, and it bounces between each other until it hits a miner, and he adds it to the list of things that he needs to compute to build the block to add to the blockchain. And when that happens, he will most likely have power behind him in his own private network, and he distributes the work up between lots of different computers. So the transaction between us goes to computer 1, transaction between some other random people goes to computer 50. And that allows them to be faster and keep up with the network to try and be that first person to announce the block to get the monetary reward. And then they divide it up between the people contributing to the pool.
Right. So if I have like a mining computer and I'm mining, I have like a certain amount of power that I'm putting towards this network, and it's going to take me a certain amount of time to find a block on my own, which at this rate it would take a really long time. Yeah. So I guess one of the benefits of a mining pool is that maybe it would take me individually a long time to find a block and actually get Bitcoin as a reward for that. But if we combine everybody onto a pool, then like you and I will get paid out a lot faster.
Right. We'll get a smaller piece, but we're actually getting a piece with the pool.
Right.
So now we're limited to about 10 mining pools that you can go look up online and see where they're at. But in order for me to connect to a mining pool, I don't have a direct connection to any miner. I announce through the Bitcoin protocol on the internet when I send a transaction that's signed with my private key, I want to send money to Matt. And so I'm connected to a node, and that node doesn't necessarily need to have mining power behind it. And so that node's job is just to pass it on to all the ones that it's connected to. So it starts from 1, goes to 2, spreads to 4, and eventually it will hit the mining pools, and they'll announce it. And nodes can operate on their own. You can mine Bitcoin if you want. You'll just be very slow.
So is a node like a piece of software, or like what is a node?
Okay, so a node is just a piece on the network. It's a computer that's connected to the internet, publicly accessible. Anybody can send transactions out. The Bitcoin software will take care of connecting you to a node, just like when you download something on BitTorrent, it's connecting you to the other peers in the network. So it works in a similar way. It figures out who's out there. It's like, hey, who's out there? And someone's like, hey, I'm out here. They become connected, and this creates this giant web, just like the internet works. It's just a computer somewhere. It could be in your house. It could be in a data center. And it stores the entire blockchain on it, which is very important because for a new node to start up, it says, okay, I'm at block 0. I need to catch up. When you start mining or when you start a node to be a relay node, you're just asking the network to give you the pieces. And so you start downloading all these pieces from the network to build your blockchain up, and you hold a copy of it. So the more nodes there are, the more intact the network is. There's less points of failure. If half the network goes down, you still have half of it that has the copy of everyone's transactions and no one's lost. So the more massive the node network is, the more protected your Bitcoin are.
So a node is specifically the history of all transactions, whereas like the miner is specifically doing the proof of work and doing these difficult math problems to confirm the transactions.
Right.
Okay. So miners get paid, pretty much.
Well, miners also have the blockchain as well, because each block on the blockchain depends on the number that was generated before it. So all the miners need to have the blockchain in order to build that number. But when they're working in a pool, the node that's at the front is storing the blockchain and can send them the numbers, so they don't need to store it themselves. If you're looking at like a 30 gigabyte blockchain like we're going to see this year, then not every miner can hold that and keep up.
So miners get paid though. Do node operators, is there any incentive for me to start a Bitcoin node and kind of help the network besides me just wanting to help the network?
Only if you put mining behind it. These nodes that are operating as a relay node, so Boost has 3 relay nodes out there in the world, spread around geographically, and all they're doing is just passing information from one node to the next and holding a copy of the blockchain for new people who want to get into it. And there's no monetary incentive. When the protocol was white papered by Satoshi, the idea was that mining pools, or miners and nodes, would all just be one thing. Every miner would be connected to the internet and hold a copy of it, and then it would be doing its work and checking with everybody else. And since this doesn't exist, now they've split up organically. There's no monetary value there to be earned.
Isn't that a problem? Because we need a lot of nodes, right? And we want more nodes to better protect the network. So if people aren't incentivized to operate nodes, what's going to happen? Is there a way for us to incentivize people to operate nodes?
I think there's a lot that can happen. So, one of the issues we have right now is that the blockchain is becoming too large to store on a home computer or on a mobile device, let's say. And since Bitcoin is a software, it can be updated, and all the nodes on the network can upgrade their software, and they're going to be able to trim the blockchain down in size and prune it, or whatever solution they come up with. So long term, I think if we end up with a separation of relay nodes and mining pools, then there will be some type of monetary compensation that will be built into the software that everybody agrees on.
So you think that Bitcoin itself will actually be upgraded to account for the fact that nodes and mining has kind of split, and that we need to figure out a way to incentivize node operators?
Yes. It'll be very dangerous if we have only a limited number of groups that are holding the balance of everybody. Right. Because then we've reached the point where we have 5 major banks. You have 5 major mining pools.
Right.
And when one controls more than 51% of the network, they can start doing malicious things, potentially. They can say that Bitcoin was transferred when it wasn't, or they can change the value.
Basically, Bitcoin would break.
Yes.
So you talked about how we could update the Bitcoin software and how that could update all the software on all the nodes and on the mining computers. So how does that actually work? Because there isn't Bitcoin is decentralized, and there's not a company that's okay, we're going to push a software update out right now. How is it decided that new code is actually going to be accepted and everything is going to be updated to that?
Well, Bitcoin is open source itself, so anybody can contribute, and the maintainers of the project, like any open source project, will be releasing version numbers, and the community as a whole will decide that they want to upgrade to it. Actually, we had an issue about a year ago where the blockchain did split because half the mining pools upgraded to a new version, and the other ones were left in an old version. There was an issue in the code which created a different number for the block, and so the blockchain split in half. And the core developer decided that everybody would just agree that the old version of the software would be the version that everybody would bank all their transactions off of until a code fix went out, and then everyone could upgrade.
So what happened to the transactions that went through on the branched blockchain?
They still went through on the old blockchain. They just were ending up with a different hash number at the end. So all the transactions went through. It just was a split, and there were 2 blockchains running simultaneously, and everyone just decided to disregard it, even though all the money still went through. There was no issue. You as a consumer that was sending Bitcoin, you wouldn't have even noticed this.
Right. But the people that are actually working on the Bitcoin code and maintaining that probably were not having a good time.
No, it was scary. It was the first time that the blockchain had split, and that was a worry that Bitcoin would split in half.
Right.
But it really turned out to be not really a big issue at all.
Right. And now we've kind of handled that situation. So
yeah.
If it happens again, we kind of know what to do.
If that happens again, we know what to do.
Right.
If a mining pool takes over 51% and decides to split their blockchain, there's not much we can do about that.
So how do we prevent a 50? So it's called a 51% attack, right? And so what exactly could they do? Like, what power does someone have once they have 51% of the mining network?
Well, when you have more than 51%, you as a node connect and you're saying, okay, I want to get all my information about how much money is in my wallet. And if all of the nodes are, if more than half of the nodes are telling you that you have 0 Bitcoin instead of 1, then now you have 0 Bitcoin the way that the software all talks to each other. I mean, potentially, if they had enough power, they could rebuild the blockchain from the bottom up, and everyone would agree on that, and all of a sudden they have somebody else's Bitcoin. There's a lot of more challenges that would go into how they would do that, but there's still the possibility there.
Right. So if you weren't at Boost, and you were going to start a Bitcoin company, do you have any idea of like what type of problem you would try to solve? Or like a couple things that you're interested in?
Yeah, I've been talking to a lot of people that are doing mining, and they're running a piece of software that's called CG Miner, which is mining software for people using specialized chips, so like GPUs or ASIC chips, that was built and forked from a mining software that was called CPU Miner that was built by this guy in his spare time, and people who wanted to add things kind of just tacked little pieces on there. So it's very sloppy code, it's not very efficient, hard to get around. And I think that there's a lot of room for companies that would make tools for companies to build on top of Bitcoin. If you're an existing company and you want to integrate Bitcoin in your business, it's very difficult. There's a high technical barrier to entry right now. And so companies like HashRabbit that are making something very easy for anyone to get into mining is a great example of that. They're doing something low level with the protocol of Bitcoin to make it easier for non-technical people or people that aren't specialized in Bitcoin.
Right.
Similar to the way that Stripe allows you to interact with credit card companies, but you don't need any knowledge of how to interact with Visa.
Right, and it's exciting once we have more of those things, because then more people will be able to innovate because they have to understand less about what they're working on.
Right.
Which is super exciting. So let's say moving forward and like the future of Bitcoin, and I think you have an interesting perspective because you're coming at it with a developer's perspective, and you also have a really good understanding of kind of nodes and mining, which is not necessarily what most people in Bitcoin know a lot about. What kind of innovation or companies in the Bitcoin space are you excited about moving forward? Like, you'd be really excited if someone walked in the door right now and they're like, this is my company and this is what it does.
I think that the blockchain technology itself is really interesting. So with services like Xbox points, it doesn't exist anymore. You have these points and you just trust that this database that they hold has the correct value. Companies don't have to use Bitcoin necessarily. They can make their own type of currency that is backed by a lot of different people that represents the value. So instead of holding virtual points in a database, they're now backed up by the blockchain, and I think that's kind of a cool use. Building on top of that, you can have smart contracts where the coin that I hold represents ownership of this building, and I can transfer that to you, and since there's no chargebacks, there's no way for me to get the building back, and the whole world agrees that you own this building now. And we're starting to see some of that. We're starting to see Electrum was built and has just been pre-IPO'd, and everyone can buy into it. And they've made a scripting language and everything, and they've built on top of blockchain technology to build these smart contracts. And I think that's where we're going to start going.
Cool. So if people are watching and they're working on a Bitcoin startup and they have additional questions about nodes, or maybe they want your opinion on it, is there a way that they can reach out to you?
Yeah, you can email me at ross@boost.vc.
Okay, guys, email ross@boost.vc to get feedback on what you're working on, I guess.
Or just to talk about Bitcoin.
Or just talk about Bitcoin. Well, thank you for helping us with the Bitcoin course. This was super interesting, super insightful. I'm sure everyone watching just learned a lot, and they have a lot of things they're probably going to go research even more now. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Bye, guys.